I'm sad from day one. Deshaun is a part of this team, and we'll continue to handle business accordingly. He's a friend of mine, he's a teammate of mine, and we're all in it to put our best foot forward and to do whatever it takes to help the team win.
That was Texans quarterback Tyrod Taylor just a few hours ago as they wrapped up practice at NRG Stadium. Texans have now trimmed their roster down to 53. Deshaun Watson still a part of the active roster, but not expected to be a part of the play on the field anytime soon. Welcome yet again to the Fox 26 Sports Stream, whether you're joining us on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or fox26houston.com. Appreciate you coming along for the ride. As always, I'm Sal Manine, sports producer here at Fox 26. We'll take a look at what the Texans did today as they trimmed their roster down to the required 53 before the regular season opener September 12th at home, NRG Stadium against Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll also touch on a little bit of Astros news. Just a few minutes ago, Dusty Baker wrapped up a Zoom session with reporters as the Astros are out west to take on the Mariners. So we'll tackle that. And then this weekend is the start of the college football season. U of H with a big one inside NRG Stadium Saturday night, 6 o'clock, as they play host to the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. So we'll take a preview of that. We'll check in with my man Dayon Dunlap. He's one of the UH announcers on ESPN3, and he has a podcast that covers all things UH athletics. So we'll bring him on in a little bit to go over the Cougs and where they stand. And of course, UT, A&M, Rice all opening up this weekend as well. But the most intriguing matchup as far as some of the local colleges seems to be UH and Tech. But we got to start with the Texans. As you just heard Tyrod Taylor say, Deshaun Watson's still a part of this team, and so they're just taking it day by day. That's been the company line all training camp long with Deshaun. Of course, he was in and out of practice, never was really going through the full complement of drills with the team. So he's technically listed as QB3 on the roster, not expected to play. I know there were the reports, rumors, speculation, maybe just some wishing on the hopes of fans, or certainly you would have to imagine some of the folks in Deshaun's camp that perhaps over the weekend or before today's roster deadline, he would be dealt, but that is not the case. From all indications, the Texans are willing to listen to offers, but they want a high price for a guy who, if he's eligible and able to play football, we know he plays it at a very high level. We heard over the weekend Charles Robinson from Yahoo Sports saying that the Texans' asking price remains 3 first-round draft picks, 2 or 3 second-round draft picks, and to go along with other reports that we've heard that could possibly be supplemented if maybe there's a young or few young players that are ready to step in right away and play for the Texans. But we know that they are devoid of top to bottom talent on the roster. Obviously didn't have a lot of draft capital next year. So if you're going to move Deshaun Watson, before you even look at the off-field situation, which is a big part of this all, as to how exactly it plays out. Is he going to be able to play? How does that affect draft compensation that the Texans might get back? You don't want to just settle to just say, oh, we don't want him on our roster right now. We don't want to have to pay him that $10 million that he's owed this year. So we'll take a 3rd or 4th round or bottom of the barrel price for when he's available. And that's a big if right now. He's a guy who commands multiple first-round picks. So you understand the Texans' thinking in this regard. Again, even with Deshaun Watson last year, they were still just a 4-win team. All indications are he wants no part of playing for the Texans this year or anytime in the future. So why just give him away to Miami or Denver or any of the other teams that he's been linked to? But for right now, what we do know is Deshaun Watson is a part of the active roster for the Texans. No one associated with the Texans is getting more deeper into that, but we will see what happens, as obviously there's a legal process that has to play out, and then what our team's willing to give up to possibly bring in a 20-something-year-old in his prime who, if he is able to play football, can be the difference maker for a team that's in better shape than the Texans roster-wise. As far as the guys who did not make the 53-man roster today, the biggest name that jumps out to Texans fans is likely wide receiver Keke Coutee. He is not one of the 5 wideouts who the Texans elected to keep. And if you watched him over the last couple of years, it was a Jekyll and Hyde situation where he showed flashes of being a great dynamic slot guy who could make plays in space, could find the end zone on his own, could stretch the field if there was a mismatch somewhere else with some of the other weapons that the Texans have had in recent years. But then at the same time, issues with ball security, with drops, with just finding consistency. And so you have to think that that all played a role into why he did not make the final 53-man. So we'll have much more on the Texans tonight on Fox 26 News at 9. And of course, our sports director, Mark Berman, has you covered at all points in time on Twitter. He is at Mark Berman, Fox 26. All right, I mentioned the Astros are out west. It's a 9 o'clock Central start in Seattle against the Mariners. They were able to rally last night and pick up a win, so they enter the game 6 games up on Oakland, 8.5 up on Seattle. But as you saw last night, and you've seen all throughout this regular season, the Mariners aren't just ready to roll over for anyone. And the Astros did not get some good news before the game. They were forced to put Zach Greinke and infielder Taylor Jones on the injured list as part of health and safety protocols. That means it's something related to COVID. They would not get into if either guy did or did not test positive for COVID, but Dusty Baker said that Zach Greinke will not be making his next scheduled start. So Jose Urquidy, who had been making some rehab assignments in AAA and is back with the team working out and slated to be activated off the injured list this weekend, the plan right now is for Urquidy to take Greinke's spot in the rotation. So no 6-man rotation for the time being for the Astros, as they are without Zach Greinke. And Taylor Jones, who after he got sent down to the minors, worked on some things, has been productive in that utility role over the last couple of weeks, been able to play some first base, even play the outfield, came up with a few nice outfield assists, but they're going to be without yet another body. So the Astros still trying to tread water and get back to full strength before September wraps up and they head into the postseason, which again, they look like they're in good shape with a 6-game lead over the A's, who are currently beating the Tigers 3-1 in the 4th inning. Again, it'll be a 9-10 first pitch for Houston tonight out on the West Coast. All right, I mentioned that it is the start of the college football season this weekend, and there's a big game right here in Houston. Of course, the Cougars hosting the Texas Tech Red Raiders. It's a 6 o'clock kick at NRG Stadium, a nationally televised game. Rice is on the road. They're going to visit Arkansas. A&M opens up at home against Kent State. There, I think last I checked, 29-point favorites there. So we'll get a bit more into the Aggies as they get a bit deeper into their schedule. Should point out there is the possibility that other than the quarterback, every other starter on offense for A&M could be a player from the Houston area. At least according to the initial depth chart they've put out, there's a chance because there's a couple guys that could be this guy or player B, but there's quite possible that 10 of the 11 starters could be from the Houston area, as Jimbo Fisher and his team have to work in a new quarterback, but their expectations do not change in College Station. So shouldn't have too much of an issue against Kent State this weekend. But then as things start to move along and we get into October, that's when the Aggies will really get into the meat of their schedule. Then, of course, UT ranked 21st, playing host to number 23, Louisiana, previously Louisiana Lafayette. Now they just go by Louisiana. Start of the new era for Steve Sarkisian and his staff. Obviously have to replace one of the most prolific quarterbacks in UT history, and Sam Ehlinger. Hudson Card, a local kid from Austin, gets the nod there. So obviously with UT, expectations are always sky high in Austin, but that with the news of them and OU going to the SEC, we know that it's going to be a few years in terms of what can Steve Sarkisian build and sustain there in Austin, and are they going to be able to compete once they do get to the SEC with not only their rival in A&M, but of course the Bamas and LSUs and Florida, Georgias of the world. So that's what's going on for the other teams. But U of H with a big one, and Vegas has it as I think Texas Tech -1. So essentially a pick'em game. And if U of H can get past the Red Raiders in their opener, there's a good chance that they could get off to a very good start, possibly 4-0, because after Tech, they got Grambling, they have Rice next week at Rice Stadium. But again, the Bayou Bucket game is always going to be divided 50-50 in terms of fan support. But Rice showed a lot of improvements last year, so certainly not a cakewalk for U of H. But they got the Bayou Bucket game next week. Then they host Grambling after that, and then they take on a Navy team that's not projected to make much noise in the American Athletic Conference this year. So a stark contrast from a year ago where, remember, U of H kept having their opener postponed or canceled. They didn't end up playing their first game until October, and then they still, even once they started playing, were having games moved around because of COVID and how that affected schedules for teams all over the country. But U of H, there were not many teams in FBS football that lost the kind of time that U of H did to start things out. So it's going to be a big year for Dana Holgorsen, year 3, as he tries to show everybody why he left a Power 5 job in West Virginia, why he is one of the highest paid coaches in the group of 5 and really in the entire country. And now that he is somewhat closer to normal in terms of how they're able to approach things, practice, scheduling, all that stuff, can U of H start to see some of the fruits of their labor? Because remember, the school president went on record saying 8 wins is not good enough at U of H. They will fire coaches for 8-4, 8-5 seasons. And we've seen that certainly with Major Applewhite, Tony Levine. The expectations are still very high for a program that has had several 10-win seasons in the last 15 or so years. So a big one starting this weekend at NRG Stadium for Dana Holgorsen and his staff.
Excitement. Game 1, I mean, that doesn't matter who you're playing game 1, but then you throw, a Texas school in there, a Big 12 Texas school in there. We're obviously going to be juiced and excited about it. I don't know. I told them, I said, just embrace that. I hope, they're going to be excited to play, and they're going to play hard.
All right, so let's talk some about the Cougars and the start of the college football season. He's part of the Cougar broadcast for women's basketball on ESPN, as well as one of the hosts of the Pod Slamma-Jamma podcast and covering all things UH athletics. Dayon Dunlap, how you doing, my man?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm glad it's football season. I'm glad that fans are going to be able to enjoy it. More importantly, I'm glad the players and everything is healthy. I'm happy they can make some money with the NIL. And so, man, all is well, man. All is well. I'm just looking forward to this upcoming football season.
I think we all are. And I think you can probably say that the Cougars are a bit more than perhaps other teams, given how last year started, or rather didn't start for them. What's been the vibe around the team, around practice, when you talk to the players about the fact that they know come Saturday night at NRG Stadium, they're going to play? After last year, their starter kept getting postponed, canceled. They didn't play their first game till October a year ago.
Well, it's really kind of been a echoed statement really from the coaches down to the players. They all have admitted that they have a sense of urgency for this season, not only because last season, but the season before really didn't go how they wanted. So they said, I feel like it's a sense of urgency. I feel like the players have really bought into the coaching staff and the message that they're preaching. And if you look at other successful programs, they echo what their coaches preach throughout the entire weekend and throughout the media. And so it's kind of what I've seen. I feel like kind of Clayton Tune had a chance to talk to him during the media availability today. He talked about having a chip on his shoulder. like the past season and just not really playing to the capability that he has and the potential that he has. He's really looking forward to, and I think this season is really going to be. I think it's going to be a good one for the Cougars. Looking at their schedule, I think it's favorable as well.
Yeah, especially starting out. I mean, if they can get past Tech, and I think last I checked, it was Red Raiders -1. So the folks in Vegas essentially think it's a pick 'em game, but they get past Tech, and then things set up very well for them for the rest of September. There's a chance they could start 4-0 before they really get into the heart of conference play.
Yeah, I think Tech is a tough game. If you look at both programs, they're really in similar situations. Both head coaches coming into year 3. Coach Wells over there at Texas Tech and Coach Ferguson at Houston. And so I think they're similar as far as where they are and where they're trying to go. And so they both have a lot of Texas talent, and both coaches kind of come from their air raid background, so they know each other well. Coach Ferguson talked about that today, having familiarity playing against TCU, and also I think he said at Tech as well when he played against their entire coaching staff. And so it's a familiarity. I think Houston is confident. I think their defensive players is the confidence that I'm hearing from a lot of them guys is really, I'm really anxious to see, can they really put together a good unit out there.
Yeah, you mentioned the similarities between the coaching staff at Tech and at U of H. How do you think Cougar fans, alums, students, people who follow UH should kind of view Dana Holgorsen and his staff? As 2019 we know was year 1 under a new regime. They redshirted a lot of guys, played a lot of young guys. Last year was obviously COVID, and of course UH had games getting canceled and postponed left and right. It doesn't feel like the same year 3 that you might normally look at a new coach and a new staff and go, all right, year 3, you got to prove something to me. What do you think is kind of a fair evaluation for Dana and his staff as they go into this 3rd season?
I think the sense of urgency started with the coaching staff because it's a make or break year, really, from my point of view. I think, you kind of get a grace period with those first 2 years. Then you kind of have the ability to kind of weed in players in and out and kind of get the guys that you want in, quote unquote, and build the culture that you want to set. And so I feel like he's done that. He's reached that point. And I'm hearing from some of the captains, I feel like they have a lot of veterans. And so it's a lot of guys that's been with Dana here since he got here. And so some of those guys who've been here for a while, and they're tired of losing just like that. And so I think it started with him, that sense of urgency. Like I just said, I think Dana has been holding himself accountable. He's came out and said that if Clayton Tune doesn't play well in year 3 in my system, then that's on me. And so just that accountability from himself will boil down to his team. I think they'll hold themselves more accountable, and they'll come out really believe in him and put it out and see if they can just have some winning product. Because like Rainer Couture, I feel like he said a couple of years ago, 8 wins isn't good here. And so I think the pressure is on. You just said the schedule is favorable, and I agree with that. Nothing less than 10 wins with that schedule that they have, in my opinion, is definitely possible. And so week 1, I think it's a huge test. Texas Tech got that quarterback who transfer from Oregon. And so I think the defense, but what I'm hearing from the defensive line is that they're having the ability to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, we know that that's something they did very well last year, even though it was an abridged season because of COVID. They lose a 1st-round draft pick up front, yet they still return some great pass rushers on that defensive line. How big do you think it's going to be as far as, we know they have a veteran quarterback, we know Dana's background as an offensive guru, it's can U of H stop teams, and can they not play so many games in the 40s? That could be the difference between a 10-win season or not.
Right, and they have a new defensive coordinator who Coach Doug Belk, who coached the safety, is now the associate head coach now / defensive coordinator. And he changed his system up a little bit. He talked about he was with Dana at West Virginia and playing that stack defense. And so I think just having a familiar voice, he's talked about he feel like he has an ability not only to coach football, but reach players. And so having those personal interactions and help these young men grow, I think they're going to be willing to, quote unquote, kind of run through a wall per se for him. And so I think these young men are paying attention to detail. I think they really believe. And from hearing Latrell Banks, who's slated to start a defensive tackle, transferred from Iowa State, hearing the immediate availability. He talked about Peyton Turner, Ed Oliver, just seeing what those guys have been able to do. And he feel like the talent that he has, along with Logan Hall, was getting a lot of recognition from his play late in the season throughout this preseason. And so he feel like those two guys can not only play well, but dominate, get to the line of scrimmage and quote unquote, like he said, have a DLU, a D-line U like you hear. And so I think the defensive line, they have a lot of depth. I know Aminu has been there for a while. It's really all about stopping people. The secondary has some turnovers. They have two outstanding cornerbacks, Marcus Jones, who's getting a lot of preseason awards, and then Pepe, Demarion Williams on the other side, who both are captains. Both of those guys are really, really good, and I think they have a chance to really be good. But week one, it's a tough matchup. High-powered offense as always. One thing Tech can do is they can throw around the football and they can score some points.
Yeah, their new offensive coordinator, as Dana Holgorsen pointed out, Sonny Cumbie, one of those great QBs at Tech. He was the quarterback during Dana's first go-round as an assistant under Mike Leach, and then obviously has gone on to have a very successful career himself as a head coach. So I think there'll be a lot of points scored at NRG on Saturday night. Let's talk a little bit about Clayton Tune. He's no longer the plucky young guy or the kid who was inserted immediately after De'Aaron King shut it down after just 4 games in 2019. He's played several games now under Dana Holgorsen in this system. You mentioned Dana said it's on him if he doesn't take that next leap. What are you expecting from Clayton Tune, provided he stays healthy, and what he can do in year 3 under Dana Holgorsen?
I mean, with Clayton Tune, it's really about one word: consistency. I think the tools are there. He's a dual threat. He can run, he can pass. It's just about consistently making the right decision. He talked about it today, and he said it's cliche, but just not going for the home run, just making the routine play. But it's really tough when you feel like you have that ability to make that big play. And so he feels like he talked about the relationship has grown. He's been able to talk to a lot with Coach Holgorsen. Now they kind of feel like they're on the same page. And so I'm looking forward to a big year. He said he has a chip on his shoulder, like I talked about earlier, to prove that he could be the player that he know he can be. And so a lot rests on him. I think if this team wants to get to where they're going, they got to have good quarterback play. You look at the quarterback play when they were successful. I mean, it was good play from Case Keenum to Greg Ward, to De'Aaron King when he played here. And so I think Clayton Tune, I think he's poised for a big year. I saw a ranking come out during the summer, like he was like the number 1 ranked quarterback throughout all Texas schools. And I looked at that list, and potentially, I mean, he can make a debate that he arguably going into the season can be. And so with the talent he have around him, I think he's in a good system for he can flourish 3rd year. Everything is lining up perfect for him. I think he can put it all together.
Yeah, I mean, everything seems to be on paper set up for success this season for the Cougs. And you mentioned that Dr. Rena Couture has gone on record before saying 8-4, 8-5 doesn't cut it at U of H. They want to get back to the days of Kevin Sumlin and Tom Herman and the last couple of years under Art Briles. Do you think anything less than a 10-win season should be considered a disappointment down there at U of H?
Yeah, I think so. I think a 10-win season should be the standard. I think nothing less of that. And so less than 10 wins, I would be surprised. I think Dana maybe, I don't know, on a hot seat, but he talked about, and so if he said to himself, having a sense of urgency, I mean, he knows the business. He's been in it for a while. I think he knows it's important, and I agree with him.
All right. So then lastly, what do you think it comes down to Saturday night on national TV, NFL venue? I know U of H is saying they're expecting 50,000, if not more, inside NRG Stadium. What do you think it comes down to as far as who comes away with the victory Saturday night at 6:00?
I think it's which defense can give their offense some extra possession. Which one can get that turnover? I think both quarterbacks are going to make plays. I think both teams have electric receivers. And so whether they come on special teams with Marcus Jones, he's one of the best punt returners. If you can get a stop and he can get an extra score on special teams or a kick return, I think it's going to be something like that. I expect it to be a high-scoring game, but whichever defensive line, or however whichever team can create that turnovers, I think the defensive line will be the key. I got faith in one of those guys to make a tip pass, get a strip sack, or something that would be able to give our offense either extra possession or close out a game or something like that. And so I'm liking what I'm hearing from Coach Doug Belk and the entire defense. I think some of those guys are in their right position. Deontay Anderson, who is a Houston native, he's back in now playing linebacker. And so I think I'm feeling good about my alma mater.
Yep, and it should be, like you said, high scoring, plenty of highlights, and at the very least, it's college football. We finally have that after last year was so weird and so disjointed. Again, you can follow him on Twitter. You can subscribe to the Pod Slamma Jamma podcast for all your UH needs, not just football, but obviously big things going on with basketball and a whole lot going on at the University of Houston. He is Dayon Dunlap. Appreciate you joining us, man. We'll have to do it again sometime.
And hold on, before we go, I didn't get a chance to talk to you after we beat Syracuse in the tournament. And I know you went to Syracuse. I got to get on you about that.
All right.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I can't let you go without getting you about that. We got you guys pretty good.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to a lot of fellow alums and people up in Central New York before that game because they were going, this group of 5 school, come on, Hakeem's not there, Clyde's not there, Elvin Hayes isn't suiting up. And I was like, nope, these guys are for real. Kelvin Sampson knows what he's doing. And you guys proved that you had it rolling last year. And doesn't look like things are slowing down for him. So a tip of the cap to you and the Cougs men's basketball team.
No, man, thank you for having me, man. My pleasure. Like I said, give me a call anytime. I'll be ready.
Awesome. Of course, Dayon had to get that dig in there as Kelvin Sampson and the Cougs roll through everybody, including Syracuse, en route to the Final Four. Should be an exciting one at NRG Stadium, 6 o'clock kick on Saturday. And again, you can find Dayon's podcast on Spotify, Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's the Pod, P-A-W-D, Pod Slamma Jamma. He's also part of the ESPN broadcast for UH women's basketball. So again, much more on the Astros and the Texans tonight coming up at Fox 26 News at 9. Of course, always on our website, fox26houston.com. We will do it again next week, as always. And if you want the most up-to-the-date info on all things in the Houston sports world, follow Mark Berman on Twitter. He is at Mark Berman Fox 26. For all of us here at Fox 26, I'm Sal Manine. We'll see you again next week.